Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to stand and speak to this bill, C-425, which introduces 3 new grounds for citizenship or its removal under the Citizenship Act based on relations with the Canadian Armed Forces. The bill introduces, first, a new ministerial power to shorten permanent residency requirement for members of the Canadian Armed Forces seeking citizenship. This would give a new power to the minister for the purpose of alleviating special and unusual hardship or to reward service of exceptional value to Canada. 2, on application, reduce the residency requirement from 3 years to 2 years for members of the Canadian Armed Forces seeking citizenship, so long as that member has both signed at least a 3-year contract and has completed basic training. Second, it contains a deemed application section for renunciation of Canadian citizenship where that citizen engages in an act of war against the Canadian Armed Forces and that same citizen also is a citizen or legal resident in a country other than Canada. Third, there is a deemed withdrawal provision of an application for Canadian citizenship where a permanent resident that has made that application for citizenship has engaged in an act of war against the Canadian Armed Forces. I must start by pointing out a classic bit of hypocrisy that we see often from the Conservative side of the House, where the Parliamentary Secretary stood up and lectured the member from Mount Royal who was bringing up the musings of the Minister of Immigration this past week of adding a section that would also allow the government to strip citizenship of those accused of terrorism. And the Parliamentary Secretary berated the honourable member on this side of the House for bringing that up and considering that, and then he proceeded to do the same thing in his own speech. So, I mean, one wonders about whether basic elements of consistency and principle have any traction on that side of the House. And by the way, I want to compliment the member from Mount Royal on a thoughtful speech that points out what Canadians really want to see in their immigration policy and in policy in general, which is well-thought-out, rational, policy-based, evidence-based, and constitutional legislation. Now, the background to this bill and the context in which it occurs, I think, is important for Canadians to remember. Since March 2008, over 25 major changes have been made to immigration procedures, rules, legislation, and regulation. These have increased dramatically since the Conservatives formed a majority government. Among other changes, the Conservatives have used their majority to freeze parental sponsorships, to weaken family reunification, to punish vulnerable refugees, and increase the number of temporary foreign workers to meet the demands of their friends in the employer side of the equation. Most of these changes are politically motivated, invariably heartless, always without evidentiary basis, and frequently unconstitutional. Now, Bill 425 attempts to fast-track the time within which certain permanent residents may apply for citizenship. Now, New Democrats think the government ought instead to be working to address exceptionally long processing times for citizenship applications, which Citizenship and Immigration Canada currently reports is an almost 2-year wait for processing. In other words, no one in this country gets their citizenship recognized anywhere near the time they are legally entitled to it, and as such, C-425 is making a hollow and, I would respectfully submit, politically motivated promise. Now, 2 years is the average, Mr. Speaker. I have constituents, and I think every member in this House does, of people waiting for citizenship who wait between 2 and 5 years to get their citizenship. These are permanent residents who came to this country, did everything they were asked of by this country, have worked hard, paid their taxes, and want to become a citizen so that they can vote in this country and fully express their democratic rights, get a Canadian passport. Instead of taking care of these unbelievably appalling and outrageous long lines, this government does nothing to take care of that. And instead they fiddle with these relatively arcane issues that don't affect very many people at all. Now, this PMB would get at an extremely limited number of cases, as the circumstances under which a permanent resident would be able to enroll in the Canadian Forces are currently extremely narrow. The Canadian Forces website and the Canadian Forces Ottawa Recruitment Office have made it clear in no uncertain terms that a permanent resident may not enroll in the Canadian Forces. However, a permanent resident may only enroll when the Chief of the Defence Staff of Canada or such officer as he may designate may authorize the enrollment of a citizen of another country if he is satisfied that a special need exists and that the national interest would not be prejudiced thereby. Mr. Speaker, how many permanent residents do we have in the Canadian Armed Forces who have served 3 years, who have completed basic training, who are permanent residents, who are applying for Canadian citizenship and are residents and citizens of another country, do we think really exist? But I can tell you how many Canadians there are that are waiting right now, permanent residents that are waiting for their citizenship. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So one might ask, why would any member of this House target a bill that might affect, I don't know, 6 people, a dozen, a couple dozen, instead of dealing with 300,000 Canadians? That shows misplaced priorities. Now, in terms of the other part of the bill of deemed stripping of citizenship, again, I want to congratulate and repeat the remarks of my friend, the honourable member from Mount Royal, who points out the very delicate matter of stripping citizenship from people. Now, I know it may be good politics, and I've noticed in this House that whenever the government gets in trouble, whenever there's when one of their members gets criminally charged, or they're under ethical investigation, or they're having a bad week, well, we have the member from Edmonton who's under charge for failing to blow. We have Senator Brazo, who's charged with domestic assault and sexual assault. We've got 4 senators now who don't seem to know where they live because it's a constitutional requirement to reside in the province that in order to collect their money, that are collecting money from Canadian taxpayers to live in Ottawa per diems based on the fact that they're away from their home, that have homes in the Ottawa area. Whenever these things happen, I notice this government turns to one of 2 things: a crime bill or an immigration bill. And invariably, they seek to marginalize and attack a certain group. That is a constant theme of this government. And you know what? Canadians aren't fooled. And you know why they're not fooled? Because if this government was interested in truly dealing with citizenship and immigration, then they would be attacking the real problems facing people in this country, which are appallingly long wait times to sponsor your parents, to unite your families, for employers to get their workers here, for skilled workers to immigrate to this country. Right now, despite all of the rhetoric and fast talk of the Minister of Immigration, the truth is, and you can talk to any immigrant community across this country from coast to coast, wait times are as long today as they were 5 years ago. There is no progress. And in terms of wait times, people don't mind waiting 6 months or 12 months. These wait times are now measured almost in decades. People wait 10 years to sponsor their parent. Now, I have a real case here from one of my constituents who's in the armed forces and serving with distinction. He's from Vietnam. He applied in October 2006 to sponsor his mother, who lives in Vietnam and who's widowed. The sponsorship was verified and first stage approved in 2009, and it's been transferred for second stage approval, which was received in Singapore in 2009. Our most recent status update, which we did for this gentleman in December 2012, indicates that the application was received in 2009, it's in queue, and there's a 49-month wait. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I still have 2 minutes. There is a 4-year wait from now, plus the 3 years that it's been waiting from 2009, on top of the time he applied in 2006. This member of our armed forces, who is serving proudly our country, defending our interests, putting his life on the line, and who wants to sponsor his mother, has been waiting since 2006. 7 years, and he has to wait another 4. That's a person waiting 11 years to sponsor their parent. And this person's not alone. Now, is this government doing anything to speed up that process? No. They're cutting officers around the globe. They're cutting funding to the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration, and wait times are going to get longer. So while all the fast talking is being done by the Minister, Canadians know the truth, that this government's using immigration as a political football, not trying to make good process. Now, I also want to point out the Minister or the Parliament Secretary said that the Conservatives have strengthened our Canadian citizenship. Well, I ask, Mr. Speaker, when was it weak? Who thought it was weak? Because we in the New Democrat side of the House have always valued Canadian citizenship, and we think all Canadians have as well. The Conservatives act as if before 2006, Canadians took their citizenship lightly. Well, I can tell you, in Vancouver Kingsway, where I have a riding that is 70% new Canadian or at least second or third generation Canadians, these people take their Canadian citizenship extremely seriously. So I don't know what kind of mind can conjure up the idea that someone's taking Canadian citizenship lightly, but it's nobody on this side of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to conclude by saying the New Democrats are going to support this bill to committee because we want to study this bill and pursue amendments. Because the idea of doing anything that might speed up citizenship for any member of our forces is an idea worthy of exploration. But let's be clear, only a New Democrat government will ever bring in the kind of immigration reforms that are necessary to actually satisfy the needs of the immigrant community in this country. And we're going to do that in 2015. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.